Kim Kaplan is the CEO and founder of Snack, a video-driven dating app where TikTok meets dating. Kim launched her career as one of the earliest employees at the dating platform Plenty of Fish, leading product, marketing, and revenue initiatives. Her product initiatives ultimately grew daily active users from 1 million to over 4 million and revenue from $10 million to over $100 million. Eventually, Kim shifted to advising for Canadian startups, that is, until a friend introduced her to TikTok. Pretty quickly, Kim observed that there was an underbelly of dating trying to happen on the app, but it isn't set up for it. So why not create the TikTok for dating? She set out to fundraise for Snack in September 2020 and announced a $3.5 million pre-seed round in February 2021, officially launching on iOS. Kim, I am super excited to interview you today. As a big fan of TikTok, I think it is brilliant that you've tried to create the TikTok of dating. And it's funny, I was just on TikTok earlier today and I was seeing all these videos that have been going viral for like boyfriend and girlfriend applications, which I'm sure you see and probably study a lot. So very topical, and I've been thinking of this interview through a lot of today. So welcome to the program. Really excited to chat with you.
Thanks so much for having me, Scott. And I swear we are not targeting you.
And by the way, too, we were chatting earlier, but for this is audio, but for listeners, Kim, her background is the Snack logo, which is a very whimsical pretzel. And we were just saying, Kim, I think it is fantastic. Like your branding, it is very Gen Z attuned. And I think a lot of companies tend to go very conservative in terms of their logos. So I guess maybe can you speak a little bit, we're talking about in the pre-show this, but can you speak a little bit about how you decided on the logo for Snack?
Sure. Well, I can even go back to how we decided on the name. I am not Gen Z, but knew that I was building a dating app for Gen Zs. And so the first thing I did was talk to as many of them as I could and said, okay, if you were going to create or have a dating app that was TikTok-like and was video first, what would you call it? And I had all these different names thrown my way, and one of them was Snack. And to be totally honest, I didn't know what it meant, so I had to Google it. And for those listening that don't really know the Gen Z term snack, it means that like, oh, he's a snack or she's a snack, and that they're good looking. And so once I figured that out and realized how much fun we could have with the name because of all the food puns that come along with it and how you can be really playful with a name like Snack, it was kind of a no-brainer to go with it. And then when we were thinking about, okay, well, what would the logo for that look like? We also wanted to go out and see what Gen Z thought it would be or should be. So we actually launched a challenge on TikTok and had a prize for it and said, whoever creates a logo for Snack, and you have to get a certain amount of views, and but ultimately we'd be picking it and we'd pick the top 3. And it was funny that this one hands down stood out across all the other ones as being the favorite of the team. But this was the first pretzel logo that got submitted, but there ended up being 5 or 6 people that submitted pretzel logos. So there's something that people love about a pretzel.
It is a delicious snack. Definitely one of my favorite things to order in food courts or various places around the world, particularly Germany. But also delicious pretzels there. In terms of what I was chatting about earlier about the viral kind of memes on TikTok where people are doing boyfriend or girlfriend applications with like a few different photos of themselves. What have you learned from that kind of phenomenon as it relates to online dating, and what do you think it tells you about what people are looking today on the internet when it comes to online dating profiles?
Well, I think every social platform has some undertone of dating to it. Facebook did originally, Instagram does today, and TikTok has that starting to come up as well, which is where the whole idea for Snack was born. But for me, it's companies and dating apps have tried to introduce video historically, and it just ended up being this slideshow of images. And the thing that fundamentally changed in the last couple of years is that TikTok taught people how to create really compelling 15 and 30-second videos of themselves. And until that moment, nobody knew what to do. No one knew how to present themselves in a video format. And so TikTok kind of created that functionality or that trend or whatever it might be, dance or the boyfriend-girlfriend application, that all of a sudden people say, oh, well, this isn't so difficult. I can do this. And when we initially even launched Snack, we didn't have video creation tools in the app. You couldn't upload, you couldn't create a video, you could only upload one. And we literally had a button that said, upload your TikToks. So as these trends become more and more prolific on TikTok, we're happy for people to then take that and use that as content on Snack. We're agnostic in terms of what platform you've created it on. It's more, how do you just create a great video first profile that puts yourself out there from a dating perspective. And when you think about TikTok, I love TikTok. I think it's amazing, but it's really hard to stand out as someone who's single. And it's really hard to know the people that are engaging. If you create a great video, you can get hundreds of likes and comments or thousands of likes and comments. And how do you weed through that to see who's relevant? And how do you know what they're seeking? How do they know what you're seeking? There's all, and like what their age is. Are they actually single or are they just commenting because they like your video? And that's where I felt there was a need for a very dating specific version of TikTok.
It's such a brilliant idea. One of the things that comes to mind is that TikTok has, or video in general, has the ability to really express someone's personality in a much more genuine way than just an image or a text write-up. I think about, I've been in a relationship for 7 years, but my partner and I met via Tinder. And I remember using Tinder, OkCupid, and you just are seeing pictures, or you're seeing little descriptions, or in OkCupid there was actually a ton of data. It'd be all these like questions people had answered, but still, in some ways, it gives you a limited sense of the person. In contrast to a video where you can you can understand a little bit of more a sense of who the person actually is via video versus just kind of pictures or text. So as we think around kind of shifting generations, I'm a millennial. I turned 30 earlier this year, and I often reflect on how different Gen Z is from my generation, the millennials. In what way do you think that Gen Z approaches online dating in a fundamentally different way than millennials approached online dating?
I think it's how they approach social in general. So they are a video first generation. If you think about how many pictures you might have on your camera, they have that many videos on their camera. And that whole notion of being authentic and real is very much more akin to TikTok than it is to Instagram. Instagram's kind of like Kim Kardashian selfie area where you put your best foot forward and you show a very curated version of yourself. Whereas TikTok is a lot more self-deprecating and a lot more humorous and a lot more, here's who I am, take it or leave it. And I think that to me is very much generational. And that you're seeing this next generation come up with not wearing makeup on camera, or you obviously do get the people that are completely done up and told a different way too. But I think TikTok is a lot more authentic and real in terms of how people represent themselves. And I think historically with dating apps, you've had these static profiles, like you just mentioned. You upload your 5 best images, you write your paragraph about yourself, and you never change it. But that's not real life. You've got all these old images of yourself that happen to be the best ones, and you just take them from one dating app to the next dating app to the next dating app. Whereas with video, first off, these types of videos didn't exist 2-3 years ago. So you can't really catfish someone with a 10-year-old video of yourself. And you're putting yourself out there in a way that, here's the things that just happen in my life. Here's like, I'm taking my TikToks where I might upload 1 a week or 3 a week, and I'm going to upload them to this dating app as well. And you can see my life in real time, not just snapshots of who I was or who I would like to portray myself as.
What are the typical kinds of topics that people talk about in their snack videos?
Well, we get a ton of TikTok videos uploaded. We have absolutely not stopped that. We also launched a feature called Truth or Dare. It's kind of our version of prompts. And we're seeing a lot of success in terms of people completing a dare, or completing a truth that we've asked them to do. And it could be like, show me your chuggiest outfit, or show me something you own that you're embarrassed to own. And those videos are actually getting significantly more people engaging with them and liking them than just the standard videos that are being uploaded. So we're trying to double down on some of those features, and have people kind of engage with these truths and dares a little bit more. And ideally, they can even ask them of each other.
Well, it's funny. I at this point actually use almost no social media. I don't use Facebook. I don't use Instagram. I use Twitter in a very limited capacity. I use LinkedIn actually now, even quite limited. But the one sort of social media site that I love is TikTok, because I actually find, for the reason I've cut back all those other ones is partly from my own mental health. Is I just found that they were net drainers of energy, versus TikTok is this kind of whimsical, cheery, more authentic, I think, site is, and it's, I think, a testament to the fact of Gen Z sort of redefining social media, and in many ways probably learning from the lessons of millennials, where it was all about trying to present this kind of sculpted, perfect vision of each other's lives, which ultimately just sets us all up for unhappiness. So it's interesting to see how Gen Z have kind of, in many ways, rebelled against, in a positive way, some of the standards that millennials set?
And I honestly, I love it. And I think it's refreshing and it's very needed in our society today.
Oh, it's so needed, I think as we talk around perfectionism and I think some of the bad social norms that exist in the past, Gen Z are redefining society in many ways, and it's just beginning because many of them are still teenagers. As they become adults, it's going to be interesting to see the way that they impact. So, kind of shifting a little bit in terms of your early career, you were the first employee at Plenty of Fish. And by the way, for our listeners, we are also have an episode with Marcus, a friend who is the founder of Plenty of Fish and knows Kim well. During your time at the company, Plenty of Fish grew into one of the most popular dating sites in the world with over $100 million in revenue. So, Kim, when you were been applying to Plenty of Fish, it was a really early stage company from the description. What attracted you to join that company?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I actually met Marcus drunk over a bottle of wine. I didn't know what Plenty Fish was. I didn't know how large the company was. At that point, there was no office. There was a couple of people that were working there, but it was still very, very new. And Marcus called me up the next day and asked if I wanted a job. And I kind of said, "Who is this crazy person that wants to hire me after meeting me extremely inebriated?" And I realized that now that I know Marcus well, he has an intuition for people that um, he believes in and that he thinks has the opportunity and the ability to grow into roles. And he can kind of pick out diamonds in the rough. And I was very lucky to have gotten in that early and sat next to him and learned from him for 7 years. And was very grateful for all the opportunities he gave me. And he kept just giving me things. And he said, "You never said no." So he just kept putting new things on me. And I think that's why I ended up taking on so many different areas inside the organization, is because I had never said no and I would just figure it out. And that really obviously served me well. And I love that experience. And I think people always ask me, like, I go back, I keep trying to think back now because my favorite time at Plenty of Fish is when we were like 12 people and it was very intimate and we were all close. We all knew each other so well and we were all friends. And at Snack right now, we're 15 people. And I'm very conscious of the fact that I want to make sure that I'm relishing the moments that we're in today, because I think a lot of founders try to make sure that they're like, I need to get to that next step. I need to do that next fundraise. I need to hire those next X number of people. And they lose sight of the fact that these moments that you're in right now are so special and so unique. And once you do raise and once you do hire and once you do get to that next step, there is other exciting things that do happen, but you never get, hopefully, you never get to kind of take that step back and live in the moments that you are today. So I think as a tech ecosystem, we're all driven to accelerate quickly. And that's part of being in a startup, but definitely I'm relishing these moments right now because I remember them so fondly for my first few years at Plenty of Fish.
In many ways, the tagline, I would say, the Venture for Canada podcast, and we've interviewed probably around 40 people, is focus on the journey and not the outcome. And I think that this is something that's come up with so many different kind of entrepreneurs that we've chatted with, because if someone's always focused on the next milestone, you lose appreciation for the present and just the joy that you end up having in these kind of little moments. So I really appreciate what you said, Kim. And I think it's really important for young people as they think around entrepreneurial ventures. And I think in particular for like first-time founders or the people at the beginning of their career, they often are the ones who are most future focused because they have this big ambitious goals and all they care about is the future. And I think advice also I wish I took 7-8 years ago was just focus a little bit more on the present and enjoy the little things of life. So one thing you talked about that I want to dig a little deeper in is you talked about Marcus and his like natural kind of intuition for picking people and finding kind of high potential talent. As you build the team at Snack and you've hired 15 people over the course of the past year, and I'm sure are going to be hiring a lot more people in the future. What's your approach and kind of hiring philosophy in general?
I think one of the tools that I've used, and this is something actually Match.com introduced. So this is post Marcus. This is in the last couple of years prior to me leaving. Was something called a Who interview. And there's a book that you can get, and it looks through someone's last 3 jobs, and you ask them the same questions about each of the jobs. What did you like best? What did you like least? What are your biggest accomplishments? What are some things that you could have improved upon? And what you're looking for is patterns in how someone has reacted in certain situations, what they do like, what they don't like. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's more who's going to be the right fit for the role that you're looking for right now. And I mean, the Who book is basically says grill someone for an entire day. I do it in about an hour and a half. I try to do an abridged version of it because I'm mindful of people's time, but it's something that I very much believe kind of creates a standard inside the organization that we do those with every single person we hire. And we make sure that the hiring manager, as well as the person who's managing HR, are involved in this so that there is that consistency in terms of what we're looking for as a team and in the culture, but also in terms of skill sets.
So you launched Snack in the midst of a global pandemic, when traditional dating in real life in most places in the world became virtually impossible. So, in what ways do you think the COVID-19 pandemic has forever altered the way humans date?
Well, I will say originally I was planning on fundraising pre-COVID. So this idea predated COVID. And of course, it was March 2020 when I was going to fly down to San Francisco and raise capital. And of course, COVID paused all of that. And I paused myself and said, how is COVID going to impact dating? How is COVID going to impact the tech ecosystem? When is going to be the right time to raise? And then come August, September, I realized that video dating is here to stay. People meeting through video and engaging through video is not going away. The adoption of TikTok became that much more prolific, and it kind of made me double down on this idea that dating, I think, has fundamentally shifted. During COVID, it was different too, in that people were willing to date outside of their city because they weren't tied to a job or a desk in a particular location anymore. So they could pick up and they can go and meet somebody that they might not have historically met because location mattered less. It was more about the connection that they made. Now I'm yet to see whether or not that's going to swing back the other way and people want to have those people living close by. But I think COVID, I think, has changed it in that what I've heard is that people are worried that we're going to go down into another lockdown. And so I think you're seeing more and more people wanting to find a relationship. They don't want to be single during another pandemic because I think it was really difficult on a lot of people to be by themselves. So you're seeing a lot more coupling up happen right now, and whether or not that changes again come summer and everyone wants to go have their hot girl summer again, I'm not sure, but I don't think there's a clear path at the moment because I don't think anyone realizes or knows what the clear path is out of COVID yet.
Also, on the topic of the pandemic, you raised a round of money in the midst of this pandemic, and I imagine fundraising via Zoom or Teams is a unique setup. So, can you talk a little bit about what it was like raising an initial round of funding for a startup in a completely virtual
I have to
environment?
say, I love the fundraising process. I think there was absolutely some benefits to doing over Zoom. I joke that like I was sitting in my den doing the fundraising versus sitting in a VC's den and where they're comfortable in a giant boardroom. The other thing is I've heard feedback, and I've never raised before, so I don't know this myself, but when you go down to San Francisco, you're constantly bouncing from one office to the next office, from one area of San Francisco to a different area in San Francisco, and trying to navigate timing of meetings with the transition or like the transit times between locations can also be really stressful and difficult. So to literally be pitching from my den and not have to worry about those transition periods, and then I could be in control of how many I want to do in a day. You're not limited to being Canadian and having to fly down somewhere and stay there for a week or two to do all these pitches. You can be a lot more flexible with your time. I mean, a couple of things that I did for specifically that I found worked well is I never went through my pitch deck. When you're on a Zoom call with somebody, there's only so much real estate on their screen that they have to engage with you. And if you're sharing your screen and sharing a deck, they're looking at the words in your deck and the pictures in the deck. They're not creating a relationship with you. I knew my deck well enough that I could just go through it and have a conversation with people. I also viewed the whole process is I loved engaging with these VCs because I thought, when else are you getting that many smart people with such different backgrounds and perspectives? And they see thousands of companies thinking about what you're working on and what problems you're trying to solve for 30 minutes or an hour. You're never going to get that opportunity back. And I would ask at the end of these calls too, is there anyone you think I should be talking to? Like, there's anyone you know that you think I would benefit from engaging with? And I got phenomenal feedback on the product. I got tons of objections that I'd want to hear from people that they're like, well, I've seen 10 of these before and here's where it went wrong. To amazing introductions to people who are very early on at TikTok, to people that are very early on other social networks that were then able to offer me advice based on their experience and provide knowledge that is not public.
Your mindset of going through this fundraising process, I think, wonderful. It's interesting. I've talked to a lot of early stage entrepreneurs in my time at Venture for Canada who have raised venture capital funding and at various kind of stages too, even for later stages. And I find many entrepreneurs often complain about the fundraising process. They say it's the worst thing, that they hate it, that it distracts them from the business, that it's stressful, that it's just full of rejections all the time. But I think it's a great example. And it's to say that it probably can be very irritating at different points for certain people. But I think your answer is a testament to the importance of mindset, right? Around shifting it. And if somebody views it just as a negative, annoying thing that they have to do, then it just becomes an annoying negative thing that they have to do. What was your initial user acquisition strategy? What was your path to kind of going to breaking into the top 10 most downloaded apps in the United States?
It really has been TikTok. I think if you go back historically and look at how dating apps have broken out, as you said, it's been through to new distribution channels. So Plenty of Fish was really successful with Google SEO. And then you had a couple of other apps that came up with Badoo and Zeus when Facebook was really cheap and easy to acquire customers and kind of spam your friends. And then you had the next wave come with Bumble and Tinder, where the rest of us were trying to cram a desktop into a mobile phone because we already existed. You had these new apps come out and be like, what would a mobile first experience look like? And I very much believe that this next wave of dating apps is going to come off of TikTok because it is a new distribution channel and there is a lot of opportunity for organic reach and for people to see your content and talk about your content and engage with it that you don't see on other social platforms. So TikTok is really where we've been doubling down. And I think it's an interesting opportunity because we are so aligned in terms of our product offering and being video first and just even the UX with TikTok that it really does kind of marry very well.
And given the surging interest in TikTok, even a lot of older millennials like me, not just Gen Z, beginning to use TikTok, I think I can only imagine the popularity of TikTok is going to increase in the future. One of the things I found interesting when I was researching your background and bio, Kim, is that at the beginning of your career and when after you graduated high school, you went to Queen's University, and I saw that you did a degree in geography. In what way did your university training and kind of experience influence the way that you see the world and potentially influence your path as an entrepreneur?
Well, I think geography for me, the times that I love geography is when I'm flying over the Rockies and you get to see all the glaciers and the mountains. And like those are the moments where I'm like, oh, I remember this from school. But otherwise, if I'm totally honest, I loved Queens. But I think a lot of my experience there was shaped probably in the social capacity versus the studying capacity and branching out and being on your own and living somewhere that's not home and having to build relationships and work together in teams to get things done. I think that ultimately is what I think I took away from that experience. As I mentioned earlier, I got somewhat lucky in meeting Marcus, and he's really the person that gave me that opportunity in tech. And I happened to be in the right place, right time, and then with a lot of hard work, got to where I got to. But I think there's these moments in time where technology shifts or where there are these opportunities to get in early where nobody else has experience. And if you think about, I would say, the world today, it's kind of happening again with crypto and NFTs, is you're getting this kind of shift in people that nobody is an expert in it. And you're starting to have a few people that are experts, but anyone can kind of jump into the industry and start to understand what's going on. When I got into tech in 2008, 2009, it was that same inflection point that there was no tech ecosystem really in Canada. There was one in San Francisco, but it was still relatively new. I think Facebook was very new at that point in time. And you're just starting to see these social apps and kind of shaping of what the industry was. And I happened to get in at the time where the industry just accelerated. And I do think we are going through another one of those shifts now where there are those opportunities for people when they're younger and they might not have a specific degree or specific experience in an area that they can learn and they can apply themselves to it and they can kind of take those leaps just like I did.
I think one of the best pieces of advice for a young person is to find like what are those giant waves? What are those huge kind of like cultural moments or forces, new economic forces that are going to like shape the next 20, 30 years? and getting in as early. The challenge is always is how to spot those opportunities, but the metaverse, potentially, and there's lots of different ways, potential things that could completely transform our world in the coming decades. But to your point, it's that mixture of strong tailwinds in an economic, and also a lot of hard work and some luck that I think can create an incredibly successful career. And to your point, if somebody's going into like a dying industry or like a declining industry, they might be really smart, they might be really ambitious, they might be really hardworking, but you have so much working against you if you're already in an industry that's declining versus if you're in an industry in growth. So I think that it's a fascinating, and it's also, by the way, I think the point about your chance encounter with Marcus is as the serendipity of life too. And a lot of people might have had that, been in the same situation as you and kind of got it in that call the next morning, and they might have been more risk averse, and they might have said, no, like, what, this is some random company, why would I go? But you saw something. You certainly saw that there was some kind of opportunity.
I don't know what I saw, to be totally honest. I mean, this was 2008. This was right after the big crash in the financial markets, and I was working at a financial company. So it was a big risk to jump from something that was stable. A lot of these companies had hiring freezes on at that point in time, and take a risk. I don't know what made me do it, but I'm so, so glad that I did. And it was funny. I signed all my papers and like said I'm joining, and then I think 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, Marcus is on the cover of Inc. magazine about basically how the one-man show is creating $10 million a year and never works. And I'm going, oh, that's interesting. Here's the company I've just joined, but it was really fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. And probably the shift from a more potentially conservative financial institution to a kind of more freewheeling startup would have been quite the transition at the beginning of your career. But boy, the experience to learn and work with somebody like Marcus, who really is one of the most successful entrepreneurs in Canada over the last 20 years is pretty remarkable. So if you could kind of go back in time and you could give advice to your 22-year-old self. So just when you kind of graduating from your geography degree at Queen's, what would you say to yourself and why?
Worry less about where you're going to end up and just enjoy the experience along the way. I think we touched upon it early, like part of it is about the journey. And I think when you first graduate from university, you're always so nervous about, where am I going to get that first job? What am I going to do with my life? What am I going to, like, what's my career going to be? And I think unless you took a very specific degree in university and to become a doctor or to become something that is very finite, it's a very daunting question to ask. And I guess to me, it all comes together. And yes, work hard at it and be out there meeting people and networking and figuring what you like and what you don't like, but worry less about what's going to come 5-10 years from now and how you're going to get there, and more enjoy the day-to-day, the experience you're having, travel, hang out with friends and family, and make sure you have that balance in your life too.
That is such important advice, and definitely something that I think is so important, in particular for young listeners to think about. Don't just get caught up in the hustle, and don't get just caught up in the future. The reality is life is so unpredictable. You can never, you have no idea. I think most people, when they're 40 or 50, and they think back to when they were 20, it's impossible to predict even what you're going to be doing 5 years from now or 2 years from now. Like, life is so full of so much randomness that it's better to embrace that randomness and just live in the moment. So I think that's wonderful advice, Kim. We've covered a really wide range of topics today, from talking about the metaverse and what is the metaverse and how it's going to change society, to discussing your early experience at Plenty of Fish and growing it into one of the world's largest dating companies, to the Match Group of companies and how they successfully acquire so many different dating apps and services from around the world, to how is the Gen Z generation is transforming online dating, to how to hire people. This is actually one of the most wide-ranging interviews that I've done in a little while, and I think it's a testament to Kim's experience and kind of eclectic perspective. So, Kim, thank you so much for coming on the podcast this afternoon. That's it for this week's episode of A New Wave of Entrepreneurship. Stay connected with us via our social and our email list. Subscribe to us in your favorite podcast app so that you don't miss our next episode. If you have feedback on today's episode, tweet us at Venture4Canada. That is Venture, the number 4, Canada. Or email us at podcast@venture4, that's spelled FOR, Canada.ca. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening. I'm Scott Stewart, and until next time, stay safe, stay motivated, and stay grateful. A New Wave of Entrepreneurship is produced by Juanita Lee Garcia and Latifa Farah. Editing and mixing also done by Latifa Farah. Erica Ormanston is our editorial assistant. Mark Wallach and Premium Beat own the copyright and publishing rights related to the song used in this podcast. The comments and opinions, recommendations, or suggestions expressed on the podcast by the guests are not liable to Venture for Canada and belong solely to each individual. Any information provided stated by our guests and our host is independent of Venture for Canada. A New Wave of Entrepreneurship is a Venture for Canada brand, and all content is owned by Venture for Canada. If you'd like to use our content, please reach out to us at podcast@venture4, that's spelled FOR, Canada.ca.